My wife's family threw me into a Montana blizzard with $60, a dying truck, and one German shepherd who refused to leave my side. They believed I would freeze before I discovered what Nora had hidden inside her green coat. But Mako led me to a round door buried beneath the mountain. Behind it waited a secret worth more than $180 million, evidence powerful men had killed to protect, and a final message from my wife warning me that her death was not the whole truth. Before this story begins, please subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support helps us continue sharing stories about loyalty, courage, and the people who refuse to abandon one another. The night my wife's family put me outside, the temperature was already 12 degrees below freezing. By midnight it would fall even lower. They knew that. They also knew my truck had a failing heater, less than half a tank of fuel, and tires that should have been replaced before the first snow. None of it stopped them. I stood beneath the stone archway of the Vale estate, while a house employee carried the last box of my belongings down the front steps. Snow blew sideways through the yellow light, covering my boots before I had finished understanding what was happening. My name is Grant Mercer. I had survived 16 years in the Navy's sea, air, and land teams. I had survived an explosion in Kandahar, 2 surgeries on my left shoulder, and enough sleepless nights to make darkness feel like an enemy. But standing outside that house, watching strangers throw away what remained of my marriage, I felt smaller than I ever had overseas. Mako stood beside me. He was a large German shepherd with a dark saddle across his back, and a gray patch beginning to show beneath his muzzle. For 6 years he had served as my military canine partner. He had found buried explosives before they found us. He had dragged me behind a concrete barrier after the blast that ended my career. When the Navy retired him, I fought through months of paperwork to bring him home. My wife, Nora, used to say Mako had chosen me long before she did. That night, he watched the front door with his ears raised and his body angled between me and the people on the porch. He understood humiliation, even when no one spoke its name. Margaret Vale descended the steps slowly, one gloved hand resting on the polished rail. She wore a long white coat that probably cost more than my truck. Snow landed in her silver hair and melted without disturbing a single strand. She had been Nora's mother. For 7 years, I had tried to call her family. I no longer made that mistake. "You have everything that belongs to you," Margaret said. Her voice carried cleanly through the wind. I looked down at the boxes. 2 jackets, a tool roll, my discharge papers, 3 photographs, a folded flag from my father's funeral, 1 pair of dress shoes I had not worn since Nora was buried. "My wife's things are still inside," I said. Margaret's expression did not change. "My daughter's possessions remain with her family." I was her family. You were her husband. The distinction was deliberate. Behind Margaret stood her son, Preston. He was Nora's older brother and the kind of man who smiled only when someone else was losing. He held a glass of whiskey despite the cold. "You heard her," Preston said. "Take the dog and leave." Mako's throat produced a low vibration. I rested 2 fingers against the side of his neck. "Easy." He stopped growling, but he did not take his eyes off Preston. Preston noticed. "That animal is exactly why Mother should have removed you sooner. Mako has better manners than anyone on that porch." It was the wrong thing to say. Maybe I knew that. Maybe some part of me wanted them to show through true faces while Nora's memory still lived in that house. Preston came down 2 steps. "You think wearing a uniform made you special," he said. "It did not. Nora spent years cleaning up after you. Your nightmares, your appointments, your inability to hold a normal job." My jaw tightened. The wind seemed to disappear. For a moment I heard another sound instead. A helicopter rotor, a warning shouted through dust. Then the flat crack of something beneath the road. Mako pressed his shoulder hard against my knee. The porch returned. The snow returned. Preston was still talking. I had missed several words, but I understood the satisfaction on his face. He had seen me leave the present, and he enjoyed it. Margaret stepped closer. "Nora made emotional decisions," she said. "Her marriage was one of them." Something inside me gave way, quietly. Not anger. Anger would have been easier. This was the moment I finally accepted that Nora had spent years protecting me from the truth about her family. She had softened their insults before they reached me. She had changed the subject when Preston questioned my education. She had laughed whenever Margaret treated my military pension as though it were an embarrassing allowance. I had believed Nora was keeping the peace. Now I understood she had been holding back a flood. The front door opened again. An elderly woman named Mrs. Keene emerged carrying Nora's green field coat. She had worked for the Vale family since Nora was a child. Her hands trembled as she walked toward me. Margaret turned sharply. "What are you doing?" Mrs. Keene did not answer her. She placed the coat on top of my box and looked directly into my eyes. "Mrs. Mercer asked me to keep this safe." Margaret descended another step. "That coat belongs in the house." Mrs. Keene's face remained calm. "No, ma'am, it belongs with her husband." Preston moved toward us, but Mako stepped forward. He did not bark, he did not lunge, he stood between Preston and the coat. That was enough. Preston stopped. I picked up Nora's coat and held it against my chest. It smelled faintly of cedar from the upstairs closet. Beneath that was something softer, almost gone, her lavender soap. For 6 months, I had been trying to remember that scent. Now it struck me so hard I could not breathe. Mrs. Keene leaned close as though adjusting the collar. Her lips barely moved. "Check the lining when you are alone." Then she stepped away. Margaret stared at her, but the old woman lowered her eyes and returned to the house. The iron gates began to open behind me. That was Margaret's final answer. I loaded the boxes into my truck while the wind pushed snow into the bed. Mako jumped into the passenger seat and turned in a circle before settling upright. He kept watching the estate through the windshield. I placed Nora's coat between us. When I closed the driver's door, the silence inside the cab felt almost sacred. Through the fogged glass, I saw Margaret and Preston standing beneath the porch lights. Neither looked sad. They looked relieved. I turned the key. The engine coughed twice before starting. The dashboard lights flickered. A warning symbol had been glowing for 3 weeks, but I had stopped worrying about things I could not afford to repair. I put the truck in gear. As I passed through the gates, Preston raised his glass in a mocking salute. I did not return it. The gates closed behind me with a deep metallic sound. That was how my old life ended. No farewell, no graveside promise. Just 2 gates meeting in the snow. For the first few miles, I drove without knowing where I was going. The Vale estate sat outside a wealthy mountain town in western Montana. Hotels filled quickly whenever a storm came through, and I had less than $60 in my wallet. The small house Nora and I once rented had been surrendered during her treatment. Most of my savings had disappeared into medical bills, travel expenses, and the months when I could not leave her bedside. My disability claim was still being reviewed. My temporary work at a lumberyard had ended when the owner shut down for winter. Every practical road in my life had become a dead end. Mako watched me from the passenger seat. "You have any ideas?" I asked. His ears turned toward my voice. "That makes one of us." The truck heater blew air that smelled of dust and old antifreeze. It was barely warm, but Mako leaned toward the vent anyway. I reached across and pulled Nora's coat over his back. Something hard tapped against the center console. I looked down. The sound had come from inside the coat. Mrs. Keene's words returned. "Check the lining when you are alone." I drove another mile until I found an abandoned roadside market. Its windows were covered with plywood, and a faded sign advertised bait, coffee, and propane. I parked beneath the crooked awning, where the truck had some protection from the snow. The moment I shut off the engine, cold began pressing against the glass. I switched on the dome light and examined the coat. Nora had worn it whenever we went hiking. The left sleeve still had a faint burn mark from the night she leaned too close to our campfire. I remembered teasing her about it. She had told me scars gave clothing character. My fingers found a row of stitches inside the lower lining. They were newer than the rest. Using the small blade on my keychain, I cut the first thread. Mako leaned closer. "You know something about this?" He sniffed the coat, then looked at me. Inside the lining was a narrow canvas pouch. I pulled it free. The pouch contained 3 things: a brass disc engraved with the shape of a fox, a folded piece of oilskin, and a small voice recorder. My hands began to shake before I touched the recorder. A strip of white tape had been placed across its back. Nora had written 2 words on it: for Grant. I stared at her handwriting until the letters blurred. The last time I had heard her voice, she was lying beneath a hospital blanket, fighting for enough breath to tell me not to be afraid. I had been afraid every day since. Mako lowered his head onto my thigh. I pressed the recorder's button. Static filled the truck. Then Nora spoke. "Grant, sweetheart, I hope you never have to hear this." My eyes closed. Her voice was thinner than I remembered, but it was hers. Alive inside that small machine. "If Mrs. Keene gave you my green coat, then my mother has done exactly what I was afraid she would do." I opened my eyes. Snow streamed beyond the windshield in silver lines. Nora continued, "She will tell you that you never belonged with us. Preston will say I pitied you. Neither of those things is true." My throat tightened. "I chose you because you never measured people by what they owned. You noticed the ones who were frightened. You protected people when no one was watching. Granddad noticed that too, even though the two of you never met." I looked at the brass disc in my palm. Nora's grandfather had been named August Bell. The Vale family rarely spoke of him. I knew only that he had been an engineer, that he had disappeared from public life before Nora was born, and that Margaret considered him an embarrassment. Nora once told me he had built strange things in the mountains. When I asked what kind of things, she smiled and said she would show me someday. Someday had never come. The recording clicked softly. "Inside the coat is a map. It leads to a place Granddad called Fox Hollow. My mother thinks it was destroyed. Preston thinks it was only a childhood story. Let them keep thinking that." I unfolded the oilskin. A hand-drawn map covered one side. The Bitterroot Mountains were sketched in Nora's familiar lines. A highway ran south from town, crossed an old steel bridge, then turned west onto a forest road marked with 3 small crosses. At the end she had drawn a fox beside a circle. Her voice grew quieter. "You must reach the hollow before they understand what Mrs. Keene gave you. Take Mako. Trust him when the road disappears. And Grant." She paused for several seconds. I could hear her breathing. "I am sorry I kept this from you. I thought I was protecting you. Maybe I was only delaying the moment when you would have to decide what kind of man you still wanted to be." The recording ended. I sat motionless. The truck creaked as the wind pushed against it. Mako lifted his head and touched his nose to the brass disc. A fox, a circle, a hidden place my wife had trusted more than her own family. I replayed the message. Then I played it again. The third time I listened for what Nora had not said. She had not said the hollow would be safe. She had not said why Margaret might want it. Most troubling of all, she had spoken as if she knew her family would remove me the moment she was gone. That meant she had been afraid long before she became ill. Headlights appeared on the highway behind us. A black sport utility vehicle moved slowly past the abandoned market. Its brake lights flared. The vehicle continued another 100 yards, then stopped. Mako rose, his ears came forward. The fur along his shoulders lifted. I turned off the dome light. For several seconds, the vehicle remained motionless in the snow. Then it reversed. Not quickly. I started the truck. The engine protested, but it caught. The black vehicle turned into the market as I pulled out the opposite side. Its headlights swept across my mirrors. I did not wait to see who was driving. I headed south. The map placed Fox Hollow roughly 40 miles away. In good weather, the drive might have taken an hour. That night, every mile felt like a negotiation. Snow buried the road markings. Wind came down from the mountains in violent bursts, rocking the truck and reducing the world to the narrow cones of my headlights. The black vehicle followed for the first 6 miles. It stayed far enough back to disappear whenever the road curved, then returned as a pale glow through the storm. I knew how trained surveillance looked. I also knew how fear could manufacture threats from ordinary things. After Nora died, I had begun doubting my own instincts. Every slammed door sounded like an explosion. Every unfamiliar vehicle seemed to follow me. Every crowded room placed my body on alert before my mind understood why. I looked at Mako. He was standing now, staring through the rear window. He was not confused. He was tracking the headlights. "That is good enough for me," I said. At the next junction, I turned onto a narrow county road without signaling. The truck slid sideways. I corrected carefully and kept moving. The black vehicle passed the junction, stopped, then began backing up. I pressed the accelerator. The county road wound through a stand of lodgepole pine before descending toward an old steel bridge. Snow had gathered across the bridge deck in deep ripples. My tires lost traction halfway over. The rear of the truck swung toward the railing. For 1 second, black water appeared beyond my window. Mako braced himself against the dashboard. I eased off the accelerator, turned into the slide, and felt the tires catch. The truck straightened. The black vehicle reached the far side of the bridge just as I disappeared into the trees. Beyond the bridge, Nora's map showed an unmarked road on the right. I nearly missed it. 2 leaning posts stood where a gate had once been. Between them, a path vanished beneath untouched snow. I turned. The truck broke through the first drift with a heavy impact. Branches scraped along both doors. Behind us, the other vehicle slowed at the entrance but did not follow immediately. The road climbed. Within minutes, the highway and the bridge disappeared below. I checked the mirror again. No headlights. That should have relieved me. It did not. The forest road had not been plowed. Snow reached the truck's axles in places and the engine temperature began rising. Every few hundred yards, I heard a grinding sound beneath the hood. Mako shifted closer. The cab had become so cold that his breath fogged the side window. I draped Nora's coat over his back again. "You heard her," I said. "I am supposed to trust you." He looked at me with the calm patience he had shown on every mission. "I would appreciate it if you knew where we were going." The road climbed another mile before the storm erased it completely. I stopped beneath a group of bent pines and studied the map. 3 crosses marked the route. The first appeared beside the steel bridge. The second showed a split boulder. The third looked like a dead tree shaped like an open hand. I had passed the bridge. I had not seen the boulder. That meant either I had missed a turn or the snow had covered the landmark. A deep mechanical knock came from the engine. The temperature needle entered the red. Steam rose beyond the hood. No, I shut off the engine. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. Wind pushed snow against the truck in soft, relentless waves. I tried the ignition after several minutes. The starter turned once. Then nothing. I tried again. A weak click answered me. The nearest occupied building was miles behind us. My phone showed no signal. The black vehicle might still be searching near the bridge. Remaining inside the truck meant waiting for temperature to kill us. Leaving meant walking into a blizzard with a damaged shoulder and no certainty that Fox Hollow existed. Mako moved toward the passenger door. He looked back at me. Nora's words returned. "Trust him when the road disappears." I laughed once, though nothing was funny. "All right, partner. Your mission." I packed water, a flashlight, a wool blanket, 2 protein bars, a first aid kit, and Nora's coat. I slid the brass disc into an inside pocket and placed the map beneath my shirt to protect it from the snow. When I opened the door, the wind struck like a wall. Mako jumped down and sank almost to his chest. He climbed free, shook himself, and immediately lowered his nose to the ground. I followed. Within 20 steps, the truck disappeared behind the snow. Mako did not stay on the road. He angled uphill through the trees. At first I tried to redirect him. "The path is this way." He ignored me. That was unusual enough to make me stop. Mako sniffed the base of a pine, moved forward, then returned and looked at me. He was not following a human scent. He had found something else. Perhaps air moving through a hidden vent. Perhaps old wood beneath the snow. Perhaps a trace that meant nothing to me. I followed him. The climb became steeper. Snow entered the tops of my boots. My left shoulder burned beneath the pack strap. Each breath felt sharp enough to cut my lungs. After half a mile, the forest changed. The pines grew wider apart, revealing dark walls of stone. Wind had carved deep hollows around their bases. Mako moved between them with increasing certainty. Then a branch snapped somewhere behind us. I turned. Nothing moved except snow. My hand went automatically toward the place where I once carried a sidearm. It found an empty coat. Mako stared into the trees for several seconds. Then he continued. The storm thickened. The flashlight beam reflected from the falling snow and made visibility worse, so I switched it off. We moved through gray darkness, guided by the shape of Mako's body. My injured leg began losing strength. I stumbled once. Then again. The third time I fell to one knee. Pain traveled from my hip to my spine. Mako returned immediately. He stood across my path and refused to move. "I know," I said. "I am getting up." He waited. A memory struck without warning. A dirt road beneath a white Afghan sky, a blast lifting the ground. My body landing hard, men shouting my name from somewhere beyond the smoke. I could smell burned rubber. I could taste blood. My hands began trembling. The mountain vanished. The snow became dust. Mako placed one paw on my boot. Not against my chest, not in my lap, just on my boot, exactly as he had been trained to do when I lost contact with the present. I looked at him, dark eyes, gray muzzle, snow resting on his ears. Montana, I said aloud. My voice sounded distant. Winter, Bitterroot Mountains. Nora is gone. Mako is here. His paw remained on my boot. I am Grant Mercer. I am not back there. The dust receded. The cold returned. It hurt, but it was real. I pushed myself upright. Thank you. Mako turned and resumed climbing. 20 minutes later, he stopped beside an enormous dead cedar. Its upper branches had broken away, leaving 5 black limbs reaching into the storm like the fingers of an open hand. The third cross, my pulse quickened. I pulled out the map. From the dead tree, Nora's line curved north toward a rock face shaped like a sleeping animal. The circle lay beneath its head. We were close. Mako knew it too. He moved faster, weaving between boulders until the land dropped into a narrow basin, protected from the worst of the wind. The sudden quiet felt unnatural. Snow descended almost vertically there. Across the basin stood a wall of dark stone covered by hanging roots and ice. Mako ran toward it. He disappeared behind a drift. Then he barked. Once, sharp and commanding, I stumbled after him. He was digging at the base of the rock wall. Snow flew between his hind legs. Beneath the drift, something reddish appeared. Wood. I dropped beside him and began clearing it with my hands. A curved surface emerged, cedar planks, black iron bands. A door built in the shape of a perfect circle. For several seconds I could only stare. Nora's childhood story was real. The round door stood nearly 8 feet high and was set directly into the mountain. Carved into its center was the same fox that appeared on the brass disc. Beneath it were 4 words, for those who return. I brushed ice from a small circular opening beside the handle. It was the exact size of the disc. My fingers had become numb, and I dropped the brass piece twice before fitting it into the opening. The mechanism turned deep inside the mountain. A series of metallic clicks followed. Then the door moved inward. Warm air touched my face. Not hot, not mysterious. The unmistakable breath of a protected room heated from somewhere below. Mako entered first. I followed and pulled the door closed against the storm. Darkness surrounded us. Then a row of amber lights flickered to life along the curved wall. The room was larger than I expected. Its ceiling was supported by cedar beams shaped like the ribs of a ship. Stone shelves held books, lanterns, folded blankets, jars of preserved food, and tools wrapped in oiled cloth. A cast iron stove stood against one wall, though the warmth seemed to rise through vents in the floor. Everything carried a thin layer of dust, everything except the table. On the table sat a metal box. Beside it lay a photograph of Nora as a little girl, smiling next to an old man with wild white hair. August Bell. Behind them stood the same round door. I touched the edge of the photograph. Nora could not have been more than 9 years old. She was missing one front tooth. Her grandfather had placed a hand on her shoulder, and both of them looked happier than anyone I had ever seen inside the Vale estate. On the back, Nora had written a message. Grant, this is where I learned that a home is not the plate carrying your family's name. It is the place where you are allowed to tell the truth. My vision blurred. Mako moved toward the far side of the room. He sniffed beneath a low bench and began scraping the floor. I knelt beside him. A narrow seam ran between the stone tiles. It formed another circle. At its center was an iron handle. I reached for it. Before my hand touched the metal, Mako froze. His head turned toward the outer door. The warm room became completely silent. Then I heard it, faint at first, an engine climbing through the storm. Mako moved in front of me, his body rigid. White light appeared beneath the edge of the round door. Someone had followed us to Fox Hollow, and they had arrived before I could discover what my wife had hidden below. The engine outside climbed for several seconds, then stopped. The sudden silence felt more dangerous than the sound. Mako stood between me and the round door, his weight shifted forward, his ears rigid. A low growl rolled through his chest. I placed one hand against his shoulder. Quiet, the amber lights along the walls reflected in his eyes. Someone outside shut a vehicle door, then another. At least 2 people. Their voices were muffled by the snow and the thickness of the cedar door, but I could hear enough to know they were not calling for help. They spoke in short bursts. One voice was deep and controlled. The other was sharper, irritated by the cold. A beam of light moved beneath the door. They were examining the entrance. I looked around the circular room. There was no visible weapon, no rear window, no second door. The shelves held hand tools, blankets, food, and old books, but nothing that would stop two determined men. The iron handle in the floor waited beside me. Mako glanced at it, then back at the entrance. Nora had led us here for a reason. Whatever was beneath that floor mattered more than the cabin itself. I wrapped my hand around the iron ring and pulled. The circular section of stone rose without resistance. It was not stone at all, but a wooden hatch coated with a thin layer of gray mineral. Beneath it, a narrow stairway curved downward. Warm air rose from the opening. Along with it came the smell of cedar oil, old paper, and machinery. Mako looked at me. Down, he descended immediately. I followed and lowered the hatch over my head. The darkness beneath the floor lasted only a moment. Small lights embedded along the stairway awakened one after another as we moved downward. The design was decades old, but the system worked without hesitation. August Bell had not built a hunting cabin. He had built something meant to endure. The stairway twisted deep into the mountain. The walls changed from fitted stone to exposed rock supported by thick steel braces. Copper pipes followed the ceiling. Some carried water. Others vibrated faintly with heat. Above us, a dull metallic scrape echoed through the hatch. Someone had found the locking mechanism on the round door. I kept descending. The stairs ended at a narrow landing with 3 passages. A metal plaque had been fastened to the wall. To the left, it read living quarters. To the right, workshop. The passage directly ahead was marked archive. Mako sniffed each entrance. Then he chose the archive. I followed. Rows of metal shelves appeared beyond the passage, stretching farther into the mountain than my eyes could follow. Sealed boxes filled the lower shelves. Leather folders, glass containers, and rolled maps rested above them. The room was dry and warm. Every container had been labeled by hand. Names, dates, locations, most meant nothing to me. Some did. Shipping companies, railroad lines, mining operations that had closed before I was born. One label carried the Vale family name. I stopped. Vale Consolidated Timber. The date beneath it was 31 years earlier. Mako turned toward me. That cannot be an accident. A heavy impact sounded somewhere above. The men were trying to force the door. I moved deeper into the archive, searching for another exit. At the far end stood a steel table beneath a hanging lamp. A gray metal case rested in its center. Unlike everything else in the room, it had no dust on it. A brass fox had been fixed to the lid. I tried the clasp. Locked. The disc from Nora's coat remained in my pocket. I pressed it against a circular mark beneath the fox. The case opened with a soft click. Inside were several folders, an old cassette recorder, a sealed envelope, and a black ledger. My name had been written across the envelope, Grant Mercer. Not in Nora's handwriting. The letters were square and deliberate. I broke the seal. The first page began with a date from nearly 8 years earlier, only a few months after Nora and I had married. Mr. Mercer, you do not know me, and if events unfold as I hope, you may never need to read this letter. My name is August Bell. I am Nora's grandfather. I sat down. Mako remained standing, listening toward the stairwell. The letter continued. My daughter Margaret has probably told Nora that I am dead. She may have told you the same. That is not entirely untrue, but it is not accurate enough to protect either of you. I left the Vale family because I discovered that the company built by my father was being used to hide theft, bribery, and the illegal seizure of land belonging to working families throughout western Montana. Margaret knew, her husband knew, their son now participates willingly. I read that sentence again. Preston, the charming son, the respected developer, the man who called me unstable while drinking on his mother's porch. August's letter said the Vale family had spent decades acquiring mountain land through shell companies. They bought debts from struggling families, manipulated appraisals, and pressured owners into selling for a fraction of the land's value. When families refused, accidents followed. Equipment failed. Barns burned. Bank loans disappeared. Records were altered. August had collected evidence, enough, he wrote, to expose the entire system. But he had made one mistake. He confronted Margaret before securing the archive. She responded by declaring him mentally unfit. Her lawyers attempted to take control of some shares, his land, and his medical decisions. August escaped before the court order could be completed. Publicly, he disappeared. Privately, he built Fox Hollow. The cabin was not a treasure vault. It was a witness box hidden inside a mountain. Another impact shook dust from the ceiling. The men were inside the upper room now. Mako growled. I folded the letter and opened the black ledger. Page after page documented land transfers, bank payments, false environmental reports, and private security contracts. Names appeared beside dollar amounts and dates: judges, county officials, bank officers. One name appeared repeatedly during the most recent years: Preston Vale. Near the back I found Nora's name. My heart stopped. The entry was not written by August, it was written by Nora. I recognized the slant of her letters immediately. I turned to the first page in her section. Granddad, I found the statements in Mother's office. You were right. They are still doing it. They are using the Veterans Housing Project as a cover. My hands tightened around the ledger. Nora had told me her family was developing affordable homes for injured veterans. She had been proud of the project at first. She attended planning meetings and charity events. Then, during the final year of her life, she stopped speaking about it. I had assumed her illness had taken her energy. The truth was worse. The Vale Company had received public grants and donated land for a veterans community that was never fully built. According to Nora's notes, they inflated construction costs, redirected money through false contractors, and used the abandoned sections to store equipment connected to illegal mining. They had used wounded veterans as a shield. Something hot moved through my chest. For months, Margaret and Preston had described me as a burden, a damaged soldier who lived on sympathy. All the while, they had been profiting from men and women who carried wounds like mine. A floorboard creaked above the archive. The intruders had opened the hatch. Mako turned toward the passage. I heard a man's voice. "Lights are on down there," another answered. "Then he is still here." The second voice belonged to Preston. I closed the ledger and placed it inside my pack. The cassette recorder and folders followed. A map was fixed to the inside of the metal case. It showed the 3 chambers and a ventilation tunnel leading from the workups, the eastern slope. An escape route. I pointed toward the right-hand passage. Mako moved first. We entered the workshop as footsteps reached the bottom of the stairs. The room held tools I could not identify, along with generators, water pumps, batteries, and a large heating system built into the rock. August had labeled every pipe and switch. A narrow corridor ran behind the main generator. Cold air entered through a steel grate. I removed the grate and found a crawl space beyond it. Mako squeezed through. I climbed after him, pulling the grate into place behind us. The tunnel was barely wide enough for my shoulders. Rock pressed against my back. Metal pipes ran inches above my face. Behind us, Preston's voice echoed through the workshop. "Mercer." He knew I could hear him. "You are frightened and confused. Come out before you hurt yourself." I almost laughed. He was already building his version of events. The unstable veteran, the dangerous dog, the concerned brother-in-law who had followed to protect everyone. Mako crawled ahead without making a sound. Preston continued. "My sister was sick for a long time. She made irrational decisions. Whatever she told you about this place was part of that illness." I kept moving. A second man answered from farther away. He took something from the archive. Preston's calm voice changed, only slightly, but I heard the fear beneath it. "Find him." The crawl space narrowed. My shoulder scraped stone. Pain shot down my arm and into my hand. I stopped. The space seemed to shrink around my chest. I had been trapped once before. After the explosion, part of a wall had collapsed across my legs. Smoke filled the room while gunfire struck the stones above me. I had spent less than 6 minutes beneath that wall. My mind had stretched those minutes into years now. Inside the mountain, the old panic returned. My breathing became too fast. The pipes seemed to press downward. I knew the tunnel was not collapsing. My body did not believe me. Mako stopped ahead. He could not turn around, so he backed toward me until one of his rear paws touched my hand. That was all. A living point of contact in the darkness. I wrapped my fingers gently around his lower leg. "You are here," I whispered. He remained here. My breathing slowed. The tunnel did not become larger. I became capable of moving through it again. We continued. The crawl space ended behind another grate. Beyond it lay a small stone room containing an old cot, a medical cabinet, and a radio console. An emergency shelter. A steel door stood on the opposite wall. I pushed it open. Snow and wind entered immediately. We emerged beneath a ledge on the eastern side of the mountain, perhaps 60 yards from the cabin. The storm hit us almost completely. 2 vehicles stood near the round door. Preston's black sport utility vehicle was parked closest. A dark pickup waited behind it. A man stood guard between them. He carried a handgun low beside his leg. This was no family misunderstanding. Mako saw him too. I kept one hand on the dog's harness and guided him downslope through the trees. Our tracks disappeared almost as soon as we made them. The map showed an abandoned ranger station several miles east. Reaching it on foot would be difficult, but it might have a radio or emergency telephone. We had traveled only a few hundred yards when Mako stopped. His head turned back toward the cabin. A faint beeping carried through the storm. Regular. I recognized it. A vehicle alarm. Then the black sport utility vehicle's horn began blaring. The guard shouted. A moment later, bright flames rose near the cabin. The dark pickup was burning. I stared through the snow. Preston's men ran toward it. One pulled open the driver's door. Smoke rolled from the interior. The distraction had not happened by itself. Someone else was on the mountain. Mako barked once and looked toward the trees to our left. A figure emerged. He wore a brown winter coat, a knitted cap, and snowshoes. A rifle was slung across his back, but his hands remained where I could see them. He was older than me by at least 20 years. His beard was almost entirely white. Grant Mercer, he called. I did not answer. He raised both hands. My name is Owen Rusk. I was a friend of August Bell. Behind him, the truck fire brightened. Preston shouted orders near the cabin. Owen pointed downhill. We need to leave before they put out the fire. How do you know my name? Nora sent me a letter before she died. The answer struck hard enough to make me hesitate. Owen reached slowly into his coat and removed a photograph. He placed it on the snow between us, then stepped back. The photograph showed Nora standing beside this same man near a river. She looked healthy. The date printed along the bottom was from 3 years earlier. I picked it up. On the back, Nora had written, "Owen knows the eastern route. Trust him only after Mako does." I looked at my dog. Mako approached Owen cautiously. He sniffed the man's boots, his gloves, and the lower edge of his coat. Then his body relaxed, not completely enough. Owen nodded toward him. Smart dog. The smartest person on this mountain. Then let us listen to him and move. We followed Owen down a steep game trail concealed beneath overhanging branches. He moved quickly for an older man, placing each snowshoe with practiced precision. After half a mile, the storm softened beneath the trees. Owen led us to a narrow ravine where a tracked utility vehicle waited beneath a camouflage tarp. Mako entered the rear compartment. I climbed into the passenger seat. Owen started the engine and guided the vehicle along the ravine without using headlights. For several minutes, neither of us spoke. Finally, I asked the question pressing hardest against my thoughts. Is August alive? Owen kept his eyes on the trail. He was when I last saw him. When was that? 7 years ago. That is not an answer. It is the only honest one I have. The utility vehicle crossed a frozen stream and entered a stand of thick fir. Owen continued. August disappeared after Nora's mother tried to take legal control of him. He stayed at Fox Hollow for several years. Then he discovered the archive was no longer safe. Why? Someone inside the Vale Company found evidence that Nora was communicating with him. Preston? August believed so. The trail widened slightly. Owen accelerated. He divided the evidence. Some remained in the mountain. Some went to Nora. The most important part went somewhere else. Where? He never told me. I held the pack containing the ledger between my boots. Preston believes the evidence is in Fox Hollow. Preston believes whatever is inside that mountain can destroy him. Can it? Owen glanced at the pack. What did you take? A ledger, folders, a recording. Then yes, a distant gunshot rolled through the trees. Owen switched on the headlights. They found our tracks. Mako rose in the rear compartment. The trail descended toward an old logging road. The utility vehicle bounced across frozen ruts, throwing my shoulder against the door. Another shot sounded. Closer, a white light appeared behind us. A vehicle had entered the trail. Owen looked in the mirror. They brought snow machines. The narrow road curved along a steep slope. On one side, the mountain rose sharply. On the other, the land dropped into darkness. The light behind us multiplied. 2 snow machines. Perhaps 3. Owen pushed the vehicle faster. The engine whined. "They will catch us before the lower bridge," he said. "Is there another route?" "One, take it. You do not know what you are agreeing to." "I have had that problem all night." Owen turned sharply off the logging road. The utility vehicle broke through a wall of young trees and descended a slope that did not resemble a trail. Mako braced himself. I gripped the dashboard. Branches struck the windshield. Snow poured over the hood. The vehicle slid sideways, caught against a stump, then broke free. The pursuing lights appeared above us. One snow machine followed. The other continued toward the bridge, attempting to cut us off. Owen guided the vehicle into the dry channel of a creek. High banks rose on both sides, shielding us from the wind. The snow machine entered the channel behind us. Its headlight grew larger. The rider accelerated. He wore a black helmet and carried something across his chest. Owen glanced at me. "Can you shoot? Not without a weapon." He nodded toward the floor. A flare pistol lay beneath the seat. I picked it up. "One round?" I asked. "One useful round." The snow machine drew closer. I opened the side window. Wind and snow filled the cabin. The rider lowered his head. I did not aim at him. I aimed at a dead pine leaning above the creek bank. The flare struck the trunk and exploded in red light. For one bright second, the entire ravine turned the color of blood. The rider swerved instinctively. His snow machine climbed the bank, struck a buried rock and rolled onto its side. The man separated from the machine and disappeared into the snow. I watched for movement. He sat up, alive. Owen gave me a brief nod. "August said Nora chose well. August never met me. He studied people for a living. Meeting them was not always necessary." The creek channel ended near a wooden bridge. A second snow machine waited there. The rider had arrived ahead of us. He positioned his machine across the road and raised a handgun. Owen did not slow. The rider fired. The windshield cracked. Mako barked. I pulled down. Another shot struck the hood. At the last moment, Owen turned toward the bridge railing. The utility vehicle hit it hard. Old wood shattered. For one terrifying instant, there was nothing beneath us. Then the vehicle landed on the frozen river below. The impact drove the air from my lungs. The windshield collapsed inward. Mako struck the rear wall, regained his footing, and climbed over the seat toward me. Above us, the gunman looked down from the bridge. Owen restarted the engine. The river ice groaned. A dark line appeared beneath the front tracks. "Move," I said. "I am trying." The tracks spun. Water rose through a crack near the passenger side. The gunman abandoned the bridge and began descending the bank. Mako stared through the broken windshield. Then he barked toward the river's far side. A narrow section of ice was covered by wind-blown snow. Beyond it stood a concrete structure, partly buried in the bank. A drainage tunnel. Owen saw it. He shifted the vehicle into its lowest gear. The tracks caught. We crawled across the river as cracks spread behind us. The gunman reached the ice just as the section beneath him collapsed. He fell waist-deep into black water. His weapon disappeared. Owen stopped. "What are you doing?" I asked. "If we leave him, he freezes." He was shooting at us. That does not change the temperature. I looked at the man struggling in the broken ice. Owen was right. I climbed out with a tow strap. Mako followed. The ice groaned beneath my boots as I approached. The man's helmet had come off. He was younger than I expected, perhaps 30. Terror had replaced whatever confidence Preston had paid him to carry. I threw the strap. Grab it, he did. Owen reversed the utility vehicle slowly and pulled him from the water. The man collapsed on the ice, coughing. I removed his wet outer coat and searched him for another weapon. A knife, a telephone, a wallet with a private security license. His name was Bryce Nolan. I looked at him. "How many men are with Preston?" He shook from the cold. "I cannot tell you. You can tell me, or you can wait here until they decide whether you are worth rescuing." His eyes shifted toward the broken ice. "4," he said. "3 contractors in Vale. Why did he come personally?" "He said there was a file about his father." "What file?" "I do not know. I believe that part." "Did he order you to kill us?" "No," he said. "Bring you back alive." "Why?" Bryce looked at the pack near my feet. "He thinks Nora gave you a code." Owen and I exchanged a glance. "What code?" I asked. "He called it the Bell sequence." I had never heard the phrase. Bryce continued. He said the archive is worthless without it. He said Nora hid the sequence where only you would find it. I thought of the voice recorder, the brass fox, the photograph. Nora's message about deciding what kind of man I still wanted to be. Perhaps her words carried more than grief. Perhaps they carried instructions. Owen wrapped Bryce in an emergency blanket, secured him inside the rear compartment. We cannot bring him with us, I said. We cannot leave him. He will tell Preston where we went, not if he does not know. Owen drove the utility vehicle into the concrete drainage tunnel. Darkness closed around us. The tunnel was barely taller than the vehicle. Water dripped from the ceiling. The engine sound echoed ahead in long metallic waves. After several hundred yards, the passage opened into a hidden garage. A rusted steel door closed behind us. Owen switched on a row of lights. We were inside another mountain shelter. This one was smaller and rougher than Fox Hollow. Tools covered the walls. Fuel drums stood behind a stone barrier. A wood stove waited in the corner. Owen helped Bryce onto a cot. I stood near the entrance with Mako, listening for pursuit. Nothing followed us, not yet. Owen removed Bryce's wet boots and checked his feet. You have medical training, I asked. August believed every man who lived alone should know how to keep another man alive. You speak about him as if he is dead. Owen paused. I speak about him as if I miss him. That was not an answer either. Bryce's breathing steadied beneath the blankets. Owen handed me the wet telephone. No signal inside. The battery may still work. I placed it beside the stove to dry. Then I opened my pack and removed Nora's recorder. Owen's expression changed when he saw it. You recognize this? Nora carried it the last time she came here. You met her here? Twice. She never told me. She was trying to keep you outside the Vale family's reach. That worked well. Owen accepted the anger without defending himself. I pressed the recorder's button. Nora's message played again. This time we listened to every pause, every breath, every change in her voice. When the recording ended, Owen held out his hand. Play it once more. I did. He closed his eyes. Near the end, when Nora said she had delayed the moment when I would decide what kind of man I still wanted to be, Owen raised one finger. There. What? The hum behind her voice. I replayed the section. Beneath Nora's breathing was a faint series of tones. I had mistaken them for equipment in the room. Owen listened carefully. August used sound patterns to lock his most sensitive files. He believed written codes could be stolen. The bell sequence. Possibly. How do we extract it? There was a decoder at Fox Hollow. Preston has the cabin. Owen looked toward the sealed garage door. Then we need another one. He led me to a workbench and opened a metal cabinet. Inside were old radio parts, wires, tape machines, and a compact computer covered by a cloth. This belonged to August. Does it still work? Most days. The machine started with a low hum. Owen connected the recorder and began transferring the final section of Nora's message. Colored lines moved across the small screen. He filtered out her voice. The background hum became clear. It was not random. 7 tones repeated in a precise order. Owen wrote them down as letters. G-A-G-F-C-B-E. What does it mean? I asked. It is not the code. A melody. Owen opened a drawer and removed a thin music book. The cover was worn and stained. Inside the front page, a child had written her name. Nora Bell Vale. Turned to a song marked by a pressed blue flower. The notes matched the tones from the recording. At the bottom of the page, August had written a sentence. Where the fox sleeps beneath the 7th stone, the truth begins with the name she refused to surrender. I read it twice. What name did Nora refuse to surrender? Owen looked at me. Bell. Outside the garage, an engine sounded in the tunnel. Bryce opened his eyes. His face went pale. They found us, he whispered. Owen switched off the computer. The lights died. Mako moved beside the steel door, waiting in darkness. A vehicle stopped on the other side. Then Preston's voice came through the metal. Grant, I know you have the ledger. He sounded calm again. That frightened me more than his anger. Give it to me, and I will let the old man live. Owen looked toward me. I whispered, How does he know you are here? From the cot, Bryce lowered his eyes. A tiny red light blinked beneath the edge of his security vest. A tracking device. Preston had never been following us. We had carried him straight to the door. The steel entrance shook as something heavy struck it from the other side. Mako bared his teeth. Owen reached beneath the workbench and pulled a lever. A second door opened behind us, revealing a narrow tunnel descending deeper into the rock. Preston struck the outer door again. The hinges groaned. Owen handed me Nora's music book. Take Mako and go. What about you? I will delay them. I am not leaving you. His eyes hardened. August trusted Nora. Nora trusted you. Do not waste that trust by dying in a room with only one useful exit. Another impact bent the steel inward. As tried to rise from the cot. I can stop them, he said weakly. Tell Mr. Vale you escaped before I woke. Owen stared at him. Why would you help us? Bryce looked toward the entrance. Because he left me in the river. The outer lock cracked. I placed the ledger and music book inside my pack. Owen pressed a folded map into my hand. Follow the lower tunnel to St. Agnes Mission. Ask for Sister Catherine. Tell her the fox returned. And you? I know another way out. I did not believe him. Neither did Mako. The dog refused to enter the tunnel until Owen knelt and placed a hand against his neck. Get him there, Owen whispered. That is your mission now. Mako looked at me. Behind us the steel door began tearing away from its frame. I entered the tunnel. Mako followed. Owen closed the inner door between us. The final thing I heard before the rock sealed was Preston shouting my name. Then a gunshot cracked through the mountain. The gunshot followed me through the tunnel. It struck the stone walls, multiplied, and seemed to travel inside my ribs. Mako stopped so suddenly that I nearly fell over him. Behind us the hidden door remained closed. No second shot came. No shout, no sound from Owen, only the fading echo. Every instinct I had told me to turn back. A man had placed himself between Preston Vale and me. He had given me an escape route, a map, and a mission. Leaving him felt too much like abandoning a teammate. My hand found the concealed latch. Mako moved in front of it. He planted all four paws and stared at me. Move. He did not, you heard that. His ears lowered, but he remained where he was. Owen's final words returned. Get him there. That is your mission now. I had followed orders in places where obedience kept men alive. I had also followed orders that returned to me years later, usually in the middle of the night, asking whether survival had been worth the price. This was different. Owen had not asked me to protect myself. He had asked me to protect the truth. I removed my hand from the latch. All right. Mako turned and continued down the tunnel. I followed, but part of me remained behind that stone door. The passage descended in a long curve beneath the mountain. Small reflectors fixed to the walls caught the weak beam of my flashlight. Water moved somewhere below us, hidden behind rock. I checked Owen's map. The tunnel continued for nearly 2 miles before reaching a service exit near St. Agnes Mission. A second line marked an emergency chamber halfway through. The path was narrow but deliberate. August Bell had built escape routes within escape routes. Every door assumed betrayal. Every passage expected pursuit. The deeper I entered his world, the more I understood the kind of fear in which Nora had been raised. She had married me because I made her feel safe. I had spent months after her death believing I had failed her. Now I was beginning to see that she had been fighting a battle long before I knew there was an enemy. The tunnel floor became wet. Mako moved carefully, testing each patch of stone before placing his weight. I kept one hand against the wall. My shoulder had gone from painful to numb. That worried me more than the pain. During the fall onto the frozen river, I had probably damaged the old injury again. I did not have time to examine it. A faint light appeared ahead. The emergency chamber. Its door stood open. I raised one hand. Mako stopped. The light did not flicker like a lantern. It moved. Someone was inside. I switched off the flashlight. A shadow crossed the doorway. Then a woman's voice spoke from the chamber. Grant Mercer? I remained against the wall. Identify yourself. My name is Catherine Doyle. Sister Catherine. That depends on whether Owen sent you. He said the fox returned. The woman released a breath. Then you had better come inside before Mr. Vale finds the western access. I approached slowly. Catherine Doyle stood beside a battery lantern. She was in her late 60s with short gray hair and a lined face that looked more familiar with hard work than ceremony. She wore a thick wool coat over dark clothing, no habit. No cross large enough to announce who she was. A revolver rested in her right hand. It pointed toward the ground. Behind her stood a teenage boy holding a medical bag. Catherine studied me. Then she studied Mako. Nora said the dog would decide whether we could be trusted. Mako moved forward and sniffed her coat. She remained still. After several seconds, he looked back at me, not relaxed, not alarmed, acceptable. Catherine returned the revolver to a holster beneath her coat. "This is Samuel," she said, indicating the boy. "He lives at the mission with his mother. He knows these tunnels better than anyone alive." Samuel looked no older than 17. He had narrow shoulders, dark hair, and a healed scar running from his left nipple to the corner of his mouth. He nodded toward my arm. "You are injured. I can walk." That was not my question. Catherine closed the chamber door behind us. The room contained a table, emergency food, blankets, and a small radio set. A red light blinked on the equipment. Samuel helped remove my pack. The movement sent pain through my shoulder so sharply that my knees weakened. He caught my elbow. I said I could walk. "You did not say you could stand." Catherine opened my coat and examined the shoulder. The area had begun swelling beneath my shirt. "Old injury?" she asked. "Yes, new damage, probably." Helpful answer. She looked at Samuel. "Support the joint. Do not try to move it." While Samuel wrapped my arm against my chest, Catherine examined the ledger, recorder, and music book from my pack. Her expression changed when she saw Nora's name. She managed to get it out. "You knew about the recording?" "I knew she intended to leave you a path." "You all knew more about my wife than I did." Catherine looked up. "That is true." Her directness angered me more than an excuse would have. "You watched her carry this alone. We tried to help her. You let her return to that house. She refused to leave you exposed. I did not need her protection." Catherine's eyes hardened. Nora disagreed. The room fell silent. Samuel continued wrapping my shoulder without looking at either of us. Catherine placed the ledger on the table. "Your wife knew Margaret would attack you if Nora publicly accused the family. Not through violence at first, through doctors, lawyers, and judges. Margaret had already done it to August. She could not have declared me incompetent simply because Nora spoke. She did not need to succeed. She only needed to bury you in accusations long enough to take the evidence and destroy your credibility." The words matched everything Preston had already begun doing. The unstable veteran, the dangerous animal, the grieving widower manipulated by a sick wife. Catherine continued. "Nora believed the archive would be safer if you knew nothing until Margaret made the first move. She died without knowing whether the plan would work." Catherine's face softened. "No, she died believing you would do what you have always done." "What is that?" "Walk toward the person everyone else abandoned." I looked away. That sounded like something Nora would say. It also sounded like a standard I was not sure I could meet. I told Catherine about Owen, the garage, and the gunshot. For the first time, her composure broke. "How many men entered?" "Preston and at least 2 contractors. Was Bryce Nolan with Owen?" "Yes." Catherine closed her eyes briefly. "Owen would not have fired first." "You know that?" "I have known him for 43 years. Then we go back. No, he may be wounded. He may also have used the sound to make Preston believe he was. That is hope, not evidence. And returning through the same passage is not courage. It is a gift to Preston." I stepped toward the door. Samuel moved between me and it. He was smaller than I was, but he did not look frightened. "My mother is at the mission," he said. "So are 11 other people. If Mr. Vale follows you there, all of them are in danger." I stopped, he continued. "You can decide to die for your friend. You cannot decide that everyone at St. Agnes will die with you." The boy spoke without drama. That made the words harder to reject. Catherine touched the radio. "We have another way to reach Owen. The mountain repeaters still work, if Preston has not damaged them." She adjusted a dial. Static filled the chamber. Then a broken voice emerged. "Eastern Station to Agnes. Do you read?" Catherine grabbed the microphone. "Owen." Catherine. Relief crossed her face. I moved closer. "Are you hurt?" I asked. Owen coughed. "Nothing worth discussing. We heard a shot. Bryce fired into the ceiling." I looked at Catherine. She did not smile, but her shoulders lowered. Owen continued. "Preston entered the garage. Bryce told him you took the lower tunnel. I opened the fuel vents and convinced him the place was about to burn. Did he believe you? He left quickly enough. Where is he now?" "Heading towards St. Agnes." The relief vanished. Catherine checked her watch. "How?" "He found Samuel's supply map in the office." Samuel went pale. "I left it there last month." Owen's voice crackled through the radio. "You did not know Preston would enter the Eastern Station." Blame can wait. Move everyone out. Catherine pressed the microphone. Can you reach us? I will try. The signal weakened. Before it disappeared, Owen added one more sentence. Grant, do not let him hear the sequence. Stack swallowed his voice. Catherine switched off the radio. We leave now. St. Agnes Mission stood beyond the southern end of the tunnel. According to Catherine, it had once been a small school and church serving mining families. When the mine closed, the church abandoned the property. Catherine remained. Over the years, the mission became a shelter for people who had nowhere else to go. Families leaving violent homes, teenagers aging out of foster care, workers injured in the mills, veterans who could not tolerate crowded shelters. People Margaret Vale's world preferred not to see. Nora had volunteered there under her grandfather's surname. Belle, the name she refused to surrender. Samuel opened a second door in the emergency chamber. The tunnel beyond was wider, with old mine rails embedded in the floor. A small electric cart waited beside the wall. We loaded the evidence. Mako climbed aboard. Samuel drove while Catherine sat facing backward with a lantern and revolver. The cart moved quickly through the darkness. Cold air increased as we neared the exit. Catherine explains the Bell sequence. August had designed a system that divided his evidence into 3 layers. The first was the physical archive I had found. The second was a group of financial records stored on encrypted drives. The third was a recorded testimony naming every person who had helped the Vale family seize land, misuse public grants, and conceal deaths connected to their operations. The ledger could prove suspicious transactions. The complete sequence could unlock the testimony. And Nora hid it inside her message to me, I said. She hid the first part. What is the second? The name. Bell. Catherine nodded. August believed identity should be part of the lock. He said machines should not open important truths without a human memory attached. That sounds inconvenient. He was an inconvenient man. The cart slowed. Ahead, wooden supports had collapsed across part of the tunnel. Samuel stopped and climbed down. I cleared this yesterday. Catherine raised the lantern. The timbers had not fallen naturally. Their ends were freshly cut. Preston's men found another entrance, she said. Mako sniffed the debris. Then he growled toward a dark opening above the rails. A sound came from beyond the collapse, metal striking stone. Samuel whispered, there is a maintenance shaft to the surface. Catherine removed the revolver again. Can we go around? Samuel pointed to a narrow space beside the rails. Mako can, we cannot. Footsteps descended the shaft. More than one person. Catherine looked at the evidence. We cannot let them take the ledger. I opened the music book. The pressed blue flowers still marked Nora's song. Do you know whether the ledger is necessary to open the drives? No. Then Preston does not know either. I removed several pages from an emergency notebook and wrapped them in the black ledger's leather cover. Catherine watched. You are giving him a false book. I am giving him something to chase. I placed the real ledger inside the battery compartment beneath the cart. Then I handed the false one to Mako. He took it gently in his mouth. Samuel stared at me. What are you doing? Creating 2 trails. I pointed toward the narrow space beside the rails. Mako can reach the mission through there? Samuel nodded. The gap opens after about 50 feet. I knelt beside Mako. Take. He held the false ledger mission. His eyes remained on mine. Find home. The command was old. During deployments it meant return to the designated safe position without me. Mako hated it then, he hated it now. He released a soft whine. I touched my forehead to his. Go. He entered the narrow gap. His body disappeared behind the debris. A few seconds later, I heard him moving quickly along the far side. The footsteps in the shaft grew louder. Catherine understood. They will see the dog carrying the book, and believe I sent the evidence ahead. What will you do? Lead them away from both. I took the recorder and music book. Samuel removed the brass fox from my coat and placed it in my hand. You will need this at the lower gate. I returned it. No, Mako will. I slipped the disc into the leather cover tied beneath the dog's collar before sending him away. Without the disc, we could not unlock August's final system. Preston would assume I carried it. That was the point. A flashlight beam appeared above the shaft. I turned to Catherine. Take Samuel through the water tunnel. She shook her head. You do not give orders here. Then consider it a request from the man your friend told you to protect. I was told to protect the truth, so was I, a man shouted from the shaft. Movement below. Catherine grabbed my uninjured arm. Nora did not send you here to become a sacrifice. No, she sent me here to decide what kind of man I still wanted to be. I looked toward the water tunnel. Right now, that man needs you to move. Samuel pulled Catherine toward the side passage. For 1 second she resisted. Then she placed the revolver in my hand, 6 rounds. I do not intend to use them. Intentions are fragile. They entered the passage. I waited beside the cart. 2 men descended the shaft. Preston came after them. His white coat from the estate was gone. He now wore black winter gear, gloves, and a wool cap. Snow clung to his shoulders. He looked less like an heir and more like someone who had spent his life imagining this moment. The first contractor pointed a handgun at my chest. The second examined the debris. Preston looked at my empty hands. Where is the ledger? I lost it in the river, he smiled. No, you did not. I watched the ice take it. You were never a convincing liar. You never knew me well enough to decide. His smile disappeared. The contractor near the debris found Mako's tracks. The dog went through here. Preston turned toward the gap. What was he carrying? The man crouched. Something rectangular. Preston's eyes returned to me. For the first time that night, I saw panic openly on his face. Go after it. The contractor removed his pack and began forcing himself into the narrow opening. I stepped forward. The first man raised his weapon. Stay back. Preston moved close enough for me to smell whiskey beneath his breath. Nora always believed she was smarter than everyone in the room. She usually was. She was sentimental. That is not intelligence. She found the evidence. She stole family records while dying from medication that made her confused. His words were prepared. He had probably repeated them to lawyers. Perhaps to Margaret. Perhaps to himself. She knew exactly what she was doing, I said. Preston leaned closer. Then why did she not tell you? The question found the wound he intended. I did not answer. He smiled again. She did not trust you. She used you. My grip tightened around the recorder in my pocket. You think she chose you because you were strong? He continued. She chose you because you were useful, a decorated veteran with a damaged mind. The perfect sympathetic face if she ever decided to attack the family. The contractor entered the gap after Mako. His boots disappeared. Preston lowered his voice. Give me the sequence, and I will let you leave Montana with enough money to disappear. You threw me into a storm with less than $60. That was Mother's decision. You stood beside her. I have spent my whole life standing beside her. For the first time, his voice carried something other than contempt. Exhaustion, maybe fear, then it was gone. You do not understand what August built, Preston said. Those files do not only damage my family, they damage banks, judges, construction companies, and county governments. Men with more power than either of us know that archive exists. Then they should be exposed. You think truth automatically becomes justice? No. I looked directly at him. I think truth gives justice somewhere to begin. He struck me. The blow came fast. My head snapped sideways. I tasted blood. The contractor kept his handgun aimed at my chest. Preston flexed his fingers. Where is the sequence? I said nothing. He struck me again. My injured shoulder hit the cart. Pain exploded through my arm. I fell to one knee. He grabbed the front of my coat. Nora is dead because she refused to stop digging. The tunnel became still. Even the sound of water seemed to disappear. I looked up at him. What did you say? Preston's face changed. He had spoken too quickly, too honestly. You heard me. You told everyone the cancer killed her. It did. You said she died because she would not stop digging. He released my coat. Her illness worsened because she exhausted herself chasing August's fantasies. That is not what you meant. The contractor glanced at him. His composure returned. My sister was sick. You are grieving. Do not turn clumsy words into another conspiracy. Nora's final months returned in fragments. The nausea, the weakness, the sudden confusion after several treatments. The private nurse Margaret insisted on hiring. The medication changes I never understood because Preston handled the paperwork. I had trusted doctors. I had trusted Nora's family because grief had already consumed my ability to question every decision. A terrible possibility opened before me, not proof. Not yet. Enough to change the shape of everything. You were controlling her medication, I said. Preston's eyes hardened. She needed care. Did you change it? You are proving Mother's case better than any witness could. I pressed the recorder's button inside my pocket. Its small light remained hidden beneath the fabric. Answer me. He crouched in front of me. You could not keep her calm. You could not manage her appointments. You disappeared into your own head whenever she needed you. Each sentence had been designed to break something. Some of them were true. I had failed Nora in ordinary human ways. I had lost patience. I had missed conversations. I had spent nights sitting in the truck because the hospital walls made me feel trapped. But failure was not the same as betrayal, and grief was not guilt. Preston had used that confusion for months. He had used it because I helped him. I believed the worst things about myself before he said them. I was not perfect, I told him, but she was never afraid of me. His expression flickered. She was afraid of you. No, you do not know that. She made a map that led me away from your house. She hid her grandfather's name. She built a message around the day you would throw me out. I stood slowly. The contractor pushed the gun toward me. I ignored him. She was not afraid of the broken veteran, I said. She was afraid of the brother who needed everyone to believe he was in control. Preston stepped back. The sound came from behind the debris. A dog barked, not Mako. A second bark answered from farther away. Then several voices shouted beyond the obstruction. Preston turned. The contractor crawling through the gap yelled, "There are people on the other side." St. Agnes was not empty. Catherine had warned them. The mission residents had come into the tunnel. Preston grabbed my coat. "What did you send with the dog?" I smiled through the blood in my mouth. "Everything." He struck me in the shoulder. I collapsed. The pain turned the world white. Somewhere nearby, the contractor shouted that law enforcement had entered the mission grounds. Preston froze. How? The answer arrived through a loudspeaker far above us. "This is Ravalli County Sheriff's Office. Remain where you are and place all weapons on the ground." The first contractor looked toward the shaft. "You said the county was handled." Preston's face lost its color. It was. That single word told me more than any ledger page. Someone inside the county had protected him. But not everyone. The contractor lowered his handgun. "I am not dying in a tunnel for a land developer." Preston turned on him. "You were paid not enough." He placed the weapon on the ground and raised his hands. The second contractor crawled backward from the gap. Voices approached from both directions. Preston looked at me, then at the water passage. He moved before anyone could stop him. He kicked the battery lantern into the rails. Darkness fell. A gunshot struck stone. I rolled behind the cart. Someone shouted. Preston entered the water tunnel. I heard his boots splashing away. The first contractor yelled that he had not fired. Light returned from the shaft as deputies descended. A woman's voice ordered everyone to remain still. I reached beneath the cart and touched the battery compartment. The real ledger remained inside. Mako had carried Preston away from the evidence. Now Preston was escaping toward Catherine and Samuel. I crawled toward the water passage. A deputy grabbed my coat. "Stay down. My family is in there." The words left my mouth before I considered them. Not allies, not witnesses' family. The deputy released me only after I identified myself and explained the passage. 2 officers entered first. I followed despite the pain in my shoulder. The water rose to our ankles. Preston's footprints were visible in the silt. The passage curved twice, then opened into a circular chamber beneath the mission. Catherine stood near an iron door with her hands raised. Samuel knelt beside the wall. Preston held the revolver against the boy's head. He had taken it from me during the darkness. His other hand gripped the false ledger. The leather cover was wet from Mako's mouth. Preston smiled when he saw me. "Your dog is very obedient." Mako stood behind the iron gate. He had reached the mission side, but could not enter the chamber. His barking shook the metal. Preston pressed the barrel harder against Samuel. "Open the lower vault." Catherine said nothing. "The Fox disc opens it." Preston continued. "The dog has the disc. Grant has the sequence. I have the ledger." "You have paper," I said. His eyes narrowed. I nodded toward the leather cover. "Open it." He kept the gun on Samuel and pulled the ledger open with one hand. Blank pages fell onto the wet floor. For several seconds, Preston stared at them. Mako stopped barking. The silence felt enormous. Preston looked at me. "What did you do?" "I made you choose the thing you feared losing." He threw the false book into the water. "Where is the real ledger?" "Safe." "Where?" "Safer than Nora was in your house." His face changed. The recorder continued running in my pocket. Preston looked toward the deputies entering the passage. He had seconds left. He knew it. "All of you think Nora was some kind of hero," he said. "She was destroying everything our family built. What did you do to her?" Catherine's eyes moved toward me. She understood why I was asking. Preston laughed once. "You still need me to tell you that you failed her." "No." I stepped closer. "I need you to tell the truth while you still believe it cannot hurt you." He pulled Samuel upright. The boy winced but did not cry out. Preston backed toward the iron gate. Mako bared his teeth on the other side. "Call the dog off." I looked at Mako Hold. He remained where he was. Every muscle in his body trembled. Preston reached the gate mechanism. The brass disc hung beneath Mako's collar. He needed the dog close enough to take it. He also needed Mako controlled. That was why Samuel was alive. "Bring him forward," Preston ordered. I moved another step. "Let the boy go first. You are not negotiating. You need two things, the disc and the sequence. Shooting Samuel gets you neither." His eyes moved quickly between me, Mako, and the approaching deputies. I gave Mako a hand signal. "Advance, slowly." He took one step, then another. Preston opened the gate slightly and reached through. Mako lowered his head. The brass disc became visible. Preston's fingers touched the collar. I changed the signal. "Down." Mako dropped instantly. Preston lost his balance as he reached farther. Samuel drove his heel backward into Preston's knee. The gun moved away from his head. Catherine pulled the boy aside. Mako surged through the opening. He struck Preston in the chest and pinned him against the wet floor. The revolver slid toward me. I kicked it away. Preston fought beneath the dog. "Get him off." Mako's teeth rested against his coat but did not break the skin. He waited for me. Not revenge, training. Control. The deputies reached us and secured Preston's hands. Only then did I call Mako away. He returned to my side. I dropped to one knee and wrapped my good arm around his neck. Preston lay face down in the water. The first time in his life, no one moved to preserve his dignity. A deputy lifted him. Preston turned his head toward me. "This changes nothing." I removed the recorder from my pocket. Its light still glowed. "I think it changes the conversation." His face became empty. Catherine looked at the device. "What did he say?" "Enough to begin. Not enough to prove what happened to Nora. Not enough to know whether her death had been hastened, manipulated, or merely used by her family. But enough to open the door." The sheriff entered the chamber. She was a tall woman with close-cropped gray hair and snow on her uniform. She identified herself as Eleanor Shaw. "I need the original evidence," she said. I looked at Catherine, then at Samuel, then at Mako. Trust had become expensive. I was not ready to spend it carelessly. "First," I said, "I need to know who told Preston the county was handled." Sheriff Shaw's expression did not change. "That is the same question I came here to ask." Behind the iron gate, a mechanism began turning. The brass disc beneath Mako's collar had shifted against the lock during the struggle. Stone moved somewhere below us. A circular section of the floor opened slowly. Cold blue light rose from beneath the mission. Everyone in the chamber became silent. A narrow staircase descended toward a steel vault. On its door were two words, "Nora Bell." Catherine whispered a prayer. Samuel stared at me. Sheriff Shaw reached for her radio. I placed my hand over it. "No one calls this in yet." Her eyes met mine. "You are asking a sheriff to conceal evidence. I am asking you not to announce it before we know how many people in your department were paid to make it disappear." She looked toward Preston. He smiled from between the deputies. Not because he was free, because he believed the same thing I did. Fox Hollow had exposed one enemy. The vault beneath St. Agnes was about to expose all the others. And somewhere inside it waited the truth about Nora's final days. The staircase beneath St. Agnes descended farther than the light could reach. Cold blue lamps awakened along the walls as the stone floor continued to open. Their glow spread across Preston's face. He was still handcuffed between two deputies. He should have looked defeated. Instead, he looked amused. That frightened me. Sheriff Eleanor Shaw noticed it too. She turned to the deputies holding him. "Take Mr. Vale upstairs. Place him in my vehicle. No telephone calls. No contact with anyone outside this mission." The younger deputy nodded. The older one hesitated. It lasted less than a second. That was enough for Mako. His head turned toward the man, his nose lifted. The fur along his back rose slightly. I had learned never to ignore that change. The deputy's nameplate read Harris. His right hand moved closer to the weapon at his side. Sheriff Shaw spoke quietly. "Deputy Harris, step away from the prisoner." Harris looked at her. "I did not do anything. I did not say you did." His eyes shifted toward the open vault, then toward Preston. Preston's smile widened. Sheriff Shaw unfastened the strap over her sidearm. "Step away." Harris moved, not backward, the lights. He struck the wall switch with his palm. Darkness swallowed the chamber. Mako barked, a gun cleared leather. I heard Catherine pull Samuel down. A shot exploded against stone, then another. The sound was unbearable in the enclosed room. I dropped beside the open stairwell and reached for Mako's harness. He was already moving. A man cried out in the darkness. Metal struck the floor. Sheriff Shaw shouted for everyone to hold their fire. An emergency lamp flickered on above the passage. Its red glow revealed Harris beneath Mako. The dog had driven him against the wall and trapped his gun arm beneath one paw. Preston was gone. The younger deputat stood beside an empty section of tunnel, staring toward the water passage. He ran. Sheriff Shaw kicked Harris's weapon away and secured his wrists. "Call him back," she ordered me. "Mako, releases." Mako stepped away immediately. Harris held his bleeding forearm against his chest. Mako had torn the sleeve but barely touched the skin. Control, even in darkness, even under gunfire. Sheriff Shaw searched Harris's coat. She found a second telephone taped beneath his body armor. Its screen showed an open message: "Vault located. Mercer has sequence. Awaiting instruction." The message had been sent less than a minute earlier. Sheriff Shaw stared at it. "Who received this?" Harris said nothing. She looked toward the tunnel where Preston had escaped. Then she turned to the younger deputy. "Deputy Collins, take Harris upstairs. Use your vehicle. Do not use the department radio." Collins swallowed. "How do I know who I can call?" "You do not." That was the truth none of us wanted. Catherine helped Samuel stand. The boy's face was pale, but he was unhurt. Mako sniffed him carefully before returning to me. I touched the side of the dog's neck. "You did well." His breathing remained fast, so did mine. Sheriff Shaw watched Harris disappear through the passage. Then she faced me. "You were right. I wish I'd not been. We have corruption inside my department." Preston said the county was handled. He did not say how much of it. Catherine looked toward the vault. "We will find the answer below." Sheriff Shaw shook her head. "We should secure the property and bring in state investigators." "Which investigators?" I asked. "The ones whose names might be inside." She had no answer, neither did I. That was the power August Bell had understood. A single corrupt man could be arrested. A network could move before the handcuffs closed. The vault waited beneath us. Its open staircase resembled a throat cut into the earth. Catherine picked up the lantern. "I am going down." Sheriff Shaw started to object. Catherine interrupted her. "This mission has protected August's evidence for more than 20 years. You arrived tonight. I respect your badge, Sheriff, but the mountain does not." Samuel stepped beside her. "I am coming." "No," Catherine and I said together. He looked offended. "I know the lower system better than either of you." "You knew the service tunnels," Catherine said. "You have never been in the vault." "My mother helped Nora seal it." The chamber became quiet. Catherine stared at him. "What did you say?" Samuel looked down. "She made me promise not to tell." "Your mother knew Nora?" "She treated her." I moved closer. "What kind of treatment?" Samuel raised his eyes. "After Nora stopped trusting the Vale doctors, she came to my mother for blood tests." My mouth went dry. "Where is your mother?" "At the mission kitchen." "Get her." Samuel hesitated. Now he ran upstairs. Sheriff Shaw placed a hand on my good shoulder. "Grant, do not decide what happened before you have evidence. I spent 6 months accepting what other people told me. That does not mean the next explanation will be true." She was right. I hated her for being right. Catherine led us down the staircase. Mako walked beside me. The steps ended at a steel platform surrounded by natural rock. The vault door stood nearly 12 feet high and had been built into a concrete wall. Nora's name was engraved across its center. Not Nora Vale. Not Nora Mercer. Nora Bell. Beneath her name were 7 brass keys arranged like the notes of a musical scale. Owen's decoder had revealed 7 tones, the melody from Nora's childhood book. I removed the recorder and played the hidden pattern. The notes echoed through the chamber. One by one I pressed the matching brass keys. DAGFCBE. Nothing happened. Catherine held up Nora's music book. The truth begins with the name she refused to surrender. A small microphone was set beside the keys. I leaned toward it. Bell. A tone sounded, the keys illuminated. Then the vault asked a question in August's recorded voice. Who carries the truth when the witness is gone? I looked at Catherine. She shook her head. I do not know. The question repeated. Who carries the truth when the witness is gone? I thought of August hiding in the mountain. Nora recording her voice while illness took her body. Owen remaining behind a steel door. Mrs. Keene placing a green coat in my hands. Samuel guiding strangers through tunnels. Mako pressing one paw against my boot when I could no longer find the present. No single person had carried the truth. Each had carried a piece. The living, I said. The vault remained locked. Catherine studied the words etched around the microphone. Some were almost invisible beneath the years of dust. She read them aloud, not blood, not wealth, not power. Mako touched his nose to my hand. The answers came to me. The loyal, deep locks shifted inside the steel wall. The vault door moved inward. Warm air escaped. It carried the scent of paper, metal, and old film. The room beyond was not filled with gold. It contained something far more dangerous. Proof. Rows of filing cabinets stood beneath white lights. Shelves held sealed evidence boxes, tape recordings, photographs, and computer drives protected inside metal cases. One wall was covered by a map of western Montana. Hundreds of red pins marked ranches, mines, forests, and small towns. Some pins were connected by black string, others had photographs attached. Families standing beside homes that no longer belonged to them. Veterans holding ceremonial shovels at a housing project that had never been completed. Workers photographed before accidents listed as unavoidable. Near the center of the map was St. Agnes Mission. A red circle had been drawn around it. Catherine stopped beneath the map. They were going to take the mission. A document, attached to the wall, identified the land as a future access corridor for a private mining operation. The Vale Company planned to condemn the property through the county and reroute the mountain road directly through the shelter. The people living above us were not merely witnesses. They were the next victims. Sheriff Shaw moved toward a row of boxes labeled public officials. She opened the first. Inside were photographs of Preston meeting with judges, commissioners, and law enforcement officers. Dates and payments had been written beneath each image. The second box contained bank transfers. The third held recorded conversations. Sheriff Shaw found her department seal on one folder. Her hands became still. The folder carried her father's name. Former Sheriff Nathan Shaw. She sat down slowly. Catherine remained beside her. Eleanor? My father served this county for 32 years. She opened the folder. The first document was a payment record from Vale Consolidated Timber. The second was a report declaring an investigation into August Bell unfounded. The signature at the bottom belonged to Nathan Shaw. Eleanor read it without speaking. I understood the look on her face. The moment when a dead person becomes someone different. The moment memory loses its safety. My father told me August was paranoid, she said. He said the old man invented crimes because he resented his daughter's success. Catherine touched the file. August never blamed you. He should have. You were a child. I wore my father's badge because I believed it stood for something. It can still stand for what you choose. Eleanor looked at her. That sounds comforting. It was not meant to be. Footsteps approached from the staircase. I turned. Samuel returned with a woman in her early 40s. She had the same dark hair and scar pattern around one eye as her son. She introduced herself as Dr. Elena Ruiz. Her medical bag shook slightly in her hand when she saw me. You are Nora's husband. You treated her for the final 4 months. Did she have cancer? Yes. The answer came immediately. Part of me had expected another lie, Elena continued. Her illness was advanced before she came to me. Nothing I found suggested the diagnosis was fabricated. I released a breath I had not known I was holding. Then she opened her bag, but her decline was not caused by cancer alone. She removed a sealed envelope and several laboratory reports. Nora believed someone was changing her medication. She began hiding samples after her private nurse visited. Who hired the nurse? Her mother, Elena, gave me the reports. They showed that Nora's blood contained unusually high levels of a sedative she had not been prescribed. The amount was not immediately fatal. but repeated exposure would have caused confusion, weakness, and memory loss. It would have made her appear unstable, just as August had appeared unstable. Just as Margaret wanted me to appear unstable. Did Nora confront them? I asked. No, she wanted evidence first. Why did you not report it? I did. Elena looked at Sheriff Shaw, to the county medical investigator. Eleanor searched the public official boxes. She found the investigator's name within minutes. Payments, a private loan, a photograph with Preston. The report Elena filed had been marked inconclusive and closed. I read Nora's laboratory results again. She knew. Elena nodded. She knew someone was drugging her. Did she know who? She suspected the nurse. She believed the nurse was following Margaret's instructions. Preston said Nora died because she would not stop digging. That could mean many things. He also controlled her appointments. Elena placed another envelope in my hand. She made this recording after her final visit. A small memory card was attached. The vault contained a playback device. I inserted the card. Nora appeared on a monitor. She sat in the same green coat that had carried the map to me. Her face was thin. Her eyes were still clear. For several seconds, she looked directly into the camera without speaking. Then she smiled. Grant, you are probably angry with me. My knees weakened. I sat. Mako placed his head against my leg. Nora continued. You should be. I kept you outside this because I knew you would walk straight toward the danger. You always. Her smile faded. I have cancer. That truth is painful enough. But someone has also been giving me medication that makes it difficult to think. Dr. Ruiz confirmed it. She looked down at her hands. I do not know whether Mother ordered it. I do not know whether Preston did. I do know the nurse reports to both of them. She lifted her eyes. I also know why they are doing it. Granddad left the final control of the Bell Land Trust to me. If I am declared incompetent, Mother becomes temporary trustee. If I die without activating the successor document, Preston gains control. I looked toward Catherine. What successor document? She pointed to the far end of the vault. A glass case contained a sealed legal folder. Nora continued speaking. The trust owns Fox Hollow, St. Agnes, 12,000 acres of timber, water rights along 2 rivers, and shares in companies Granddad created after he left the Vales. The figure displayed beside the file was enormous. More than $180 million in land, investments, and mineral rights. But the value was not stored as gold. It was tied to forests, water, housing, and communities. Things Preston could exploit. Things Nora intended to protect. I changed the successor, she said. I chose you, Grant. My vision blurred, not because you are my husband. Not because I need a hero. I chose you because you know the difference between protecting something and owning it. The recording paused as she gathered her breath. The trust cannot be sold for personal profit. Its income must support displaced families, veterans, working dogs, and the mountain communities harmed by the Vale Company. Mako's head pressed harder against me. Nora looked exhausted. Still, her voice remained steady. You may believe you are broken when you hear this. Mother will make sure of that. She will use every night you woke frightened. Every time you lost track of a conversation, every day grief made you impossible to reach. Tears moved down my face. She will tell you those things make you unfit. Please remember that wounds do not remove a person's right to choose what is good. I covered my mouth. No one in the vault looked away. Nora finished quietly. I do not need you to avenge me. I need you to tell the truth. Then build something kinder than what my family built. The screen went dark. For several seconds all I heard was Mako breathing. The trust folder required my signature, Nora's recording, and the brass fox. Once activated, it would transfer control to me while preventing the land from being sold outside its charitable purpose. I had entered the mountains with $60. Now a dead woman had placed the future of thousands of acres in my hands. I did not feel rich. I felt terrified. Sheriff Shaw opened another cabinet. We need to duplicate everything. Catherine agreed. There are secure transmitters in the communications room. Where did they send the files? To 5 newspapers, 2 federal offices, and 3 law firms August selected. Are they still active? Only one way to know. Samuel led us to a smaller room behind the vault. Old servers stood beside modern drives Nora must have installed during her visits. A satellite transmitter was mounted near the ceiling. The system requested the bell sequence and the successor's name. I entered both. A screen displayed hundreds of files. The final command read, "Release complete archive." My finger hovered above the key. Once sent, the evidence could not be hidden again. It also could not be controlled. Some people named in the archive might be innocent. Some records might be misunderstood. Families would be exposed. Institutions could collapse. Sheriff Shaw spoke behind me. "You have the right to wait for counsel. So does Preston." "That is not what I meant, I know." Catherine looked at the map of stolen land. August waited because he wanted perfect proof. Nora waited because she wanted to protect Grant. Every delay gave the Vales another year. Elena folded her arms. "Release the medical evidence only with Nora's consent." "She recorded it for that purpose," I said. "She recorded it for you." Those are not always the same thing. The distinction mattered. Truth did not require cruelty. I selected the financial records, land seizures, public corruption files, Nora's legal testimony, and the evidence connected to the veterans' fraud. I withheld private medical information unrelated to the drugging. I withheld photographs of families that did not prove a crime. I created copies for investigators and separate public files for journalists. August had gathered the truth. Nora had given me authority. The responsibility for using it belonged to me. I pressed release. The transmitter began sending. A progress bar moved slowly across the screen. 2, 3. A warning sounded above us. Samuel looked toward the staircase. The exterior gate opened. Sheriff Shaw drew her weapon. "Preston?" Catherine checked the security panel. The monitor showed the mission courtyard. 3 dark vehicles had arrived. Men in tactical clothing moved toward the buildings. A county patrol car led them. Sheriff Shaw leaned closer to the screen. "That is Chief Deputy Rourke, her second in command. The man who controlled night operations, dispatch, and tactical response." On the monitor, Rourke raised a loudspeaker. "Sheriff Shaw, the mission is under emergency authority. Surrender Grant Mercer and all stolen materials." Eleanor closed her eyes once. Then she activated the internal speaker. "This is Sheriff Shaw. Chief Deputy Rourke is acting without lawful authority. All mission residents remain inside." The progress bar reached 8%. Outside, Rourke's men spread across the courtyard. Several wore county uniforms, others had no insignia. Catherine counted the vehicles. They brought more than 20 men. "We have one entrance to the vault," Samuel said, "and a second exit," Catherine replied. Sheriff Shaw looked at me. "You should take the trust documents and leave." "No. If they stop the transmissions, everything remains vulnerable. Then we keep it running. You have Mako and an injured arm. You are not defending a vault against 20 armed men." "I am not planning to." A voice came through the mission radio. "Owen." "Agnes, do you read?" Catherine grabbed the microphone. "We hear you. I have friends approaching from the north." "What friends?" The kind Preston forgot he had harmed. Headlights appeared on the distant mountain road, not police lights. Dozens of ordinary vehicles, pickup trucks, farm vehicles, old utility vans. People began arriving from the valley. Ranchers whose land had been threatened, veterans connected to St. Agnes, former mill workers, families who had heard Rourke's emergency order on local scanners and recognized the Vale name. They parked along the only road leading to the mission. Men and women stepped out without weapons. They carried cameras, telephones, and signs bearing the names of lost farms and closed businesses. Rourke's tactical vehicles were trapped between the mission and the people they had spent years ignoring. The transmission reached 14%. Sheriff Shaw looked at the crowd. Owen called them. Catherine shook her head. Nora did. "She is dead. She spent years telling people where to stand when this day arrived." Rourke's voice returned over the loudspeaker. "This gathering is unlawful. Clear the road." No one moved. More vehicles arrived. A local news van stopped at the back of the line. Then another. The archive had already reached a newsroom. 14% had been enough. Rourke understood. His men began moving toward the mission entrance. Sheriff Shaw headed upstairs. I caught her arm. "What are you doing?" "My job. You do not know which deputies are loyal. I know the people outside are unarmed. So are you, compared with what Rourke brought." She looked at her badge. "This belonged to my father." "Then do not let his mistakes decide what it means tonight." She removed the badge. For a moment, I thought she would leave it behind. Instead, she fixed it more firmly to her coat. I am going to give every deputy outside a choice. Catherine handed her the mission radio. Make sure they hear it. Eleanor climbed the stairs alone. On the monitor, she emerged into the courtyard with both hands visible. Rourke approached her. They spoke beyond the range of the camera's microphone. Then he pointed toward the mission. Eleanor shook her head. Rourke removed his weapon. Several deputies raised theirs. Mako growled at the screen. I found the public address controls. Sheriff Shaw's mission radio was still transmitting. Her voice filled the courtyard, the vault, and every speaker connected to the system. Chief Deputy Rourke has participated in the concealment of financial crimes committed by the Vale family. Evidence has been transmitted to state and federal authorities. Rourke shouted for someone to cut the power. The mission lights died. The vault remained illuminated by August's independent system. The transmitter continued. 27%. Sheriff Shaw's voice carried from the radio. Every officer here swore an oath to the law, not to me and not to Mr. Rourke. Place your weapons on the ground and step away from his command. For several seconds no one moved, then one deputy lowered his rifle. Another followed. Rourke turned on them. You will lose everything. A woman in the crowd answered through a portable speaker. We already did. The mountain repeated her words. We already did. More deputies lowered their weapons. The private contractors did not. Rourke stepped toward Sheriff Shaw and pressed his pistol against her chest. Mako barked violently. On the monitor, I saw a figure moving along the roof behind Rourke. Owen, his brown coat was torn, blood darkened one sleeve. But he was alive. He descended a ladder without making a sound. Rourke never saw him. Owen struck the back of Rourke's wrist with a wooden staff. The pistol fell. Sheriff Shaw drove Rourke to the ground. The loyal deputies surrounded the remaining contractors. No shots were fired. No one became the martyr Preston wanted. The transmission passed 40%. I finally breathed. Then Samuel pointed to another screen. A black sport utility vehicle moved through the forest behind the mission. Preston had found a service road. He was heading back toward Fox Hollow. Catherine studied the route. Why return there? The answer appeared on the archive screen. A security warning flashed beside one file. Manual destruction protocol initiated at primary archive. Fox Hollow. Preston had activated a system designed to burn the evidence still inside the mountain. The released files continued transmitting, but less than half had been sent. The proof connecting the Vale family to the deaths, the mining operation, and the highest public officials remained stored at Fox Hollow. Owen entered the vault, holding his wounded arm. The fire protocol will seal every chamber and raise the temperature until nothing survives. How long? I asked. Less than 1 hour. Sheriff Shaw followed him inside. We can stop Preston at the road. No, Owen said. He knows routes your vehicles cannot reach. I picked up my pack. Catherine blocked me. Your shoulder is damaged. My dog knows the eastern trail. Mako stood beside the staircase, already waiting. Sheriff Shaw looked at the transmission. 43%. Grant the evidence already sent may be enough. Enough to arrest Preston? Possibly. Enough to restore the stolen land? She did not answer. Enough to prove what happened to the workers whose deaths were hidden. Silence. Owen handed me the key to the tracked utility vehicle. There is a direct path from the mission ridge. Catherine turned on him. You are encouraging this? I am recognizing that he will go with or without the key. That was true. I knelt beside Mako and adjusted his harness. The dog touched his nose to my face. Through the mountain speakers, Nora's recorded voice played automatically as the transmission continued. I do not need you to avenge me, I need you to tell the truth. Then build something kinder than what my family built. I looked at the rising percentage, 4.5. Preston believed he could still bury the final truth beneath fire and stone. He had been wrong about Nora. He had been wrong about Mako. He had been wrong about every person gathering outside St. Agnes. Now he was waiting at the place where the story began. The round door beneath the frozen mountain I stood. Let us finish bringing the truth home. The tracked utility vehicle climbed the mission ridge beneath a sky that had begun turning gray. The storm was weakening, but the mountain remained dangerous. Snow covered the old service path in deep waves. Wind moved across the open slopes, erasing our tracks almost as soon as the vehicle made them. Mako stood behind my seat, He leaned into every turn, his eyes fixed on the forest ahead. Owen sat beside me with his wounded arm wrapped tightly against his body. Sheriff Shaw had wanted him to remain at St. Agnes. He refused. August built the destruction system, he said. I helped him install it. If Preston has activated the full sequence, you will need me. You are bleeding through the bandage. I have bled before. That does not make it a good habit. He almost smiled. The archive transmission continued through the small computer mounted near the dashboard. 48%. Then 49. The signal weakened whenever the trail passed beneath heavy rock. Each lost bar felt like a clock running backward. Preston did not need to destroy every copy. He only needed to destroy enough original evidence to let his lawyers challenge what remained. A missing page could become doubt. A damaged recording could become manipulation. A dead witness could become a liar. That was how families like the Vales survived. They did not erase the truth completely. They injured it until ordinary people became too tired to keep asking questions. We crossed the frozen creek where Bryce Nolan had fallen through the ice. The broken section had already hardened beneath a thin white skin. I wondered where Bryce was. Sheriff Shaw said he had been taken into protective custody. He had agreed to identify Preston's contractors and describe the orders he received. A man who had chased us with a weapon was now helping expose the person who abandoned him. Loyalty purchased with money had limits. Mako's loyalty did not. He moved forward and rested his chin beside my shoulder. What is it? His ears turned toward the western slope. The route ahead appeared empty. Then I saw a line of smoke rising beyond the trees. Fox Hollow. Owen saw it too. He started the upper vents. Does that mean the archive is burning? Not yet. The system heats the chambers in stages. August designed it to destroy sensitive materials if armed men ever took control of the mountain. Why would he build something that could erase everything he protected? Because he feared torture more than fire. The answer carried an old history I did not know. Owen looked toward the smoke. He never imagined Nora would turn the archive into public evidence. To him, secrecy was survival. Secrecy almost killed the truth. Owen nodded. She became wiser than both of us. The utility vehicle reached the final ridge. Below us, the circular door of Fox Hollow stood open. Preston's black vehicle was parked near the entrance. One rear door hung loose. Snow had gathered across its roof, but the engine was still running. No guards waited outside, no contractors. Preston had come alone. Or he wanted us to believe he had. I stopped beneath the trees. Owen checked the old rifle across his back. I shook my head. We are not carrying that inside. He may be armed. He wants the sequence and the evidence. If we enter with a rifle, he gets to call this a battle. It is a battle. No, it is a crime scene. Owen looked at me for several seconds. Then he left the rifle in the vehicle. I removed Sheriff Shaw's small body camera from my coat and fastened it near my collar. It transmitted directly to the mission through the utility vehicle's antenna. Every word inside Fox Hollow would be recorded if the signal held. The archive transmission reached 52%. Mako jumped into the snow. We approached the round door from the side. Heat rolled from the entrance. The upper cabin no longer felt like the warm refuge Nora had promised. Amber lights flashed red along the walls. Warning bells rang beneath the floor. Books had been thrown from the shelves. Boxes lay open. The photograph of Nora and August had fallen beside the table. I picked it up. The glass was cracked across Nora's face. Mako sniffed the open hatch. No one waited on the stairs. Owen examined the control panel beside the stove. Preston bypassed the first safety lock. How much time? The destruction cycle completes when the central temperature reaches 400 degrees. A needle on the panel had already passed 200. Can you shut it down from here? No. The final controls are in the archive. We descended. Heat increased with every turn of the stairs. The underground lights had changed from gold to red. Metal pipes clicked behind the stone as expanding heat moved through them. Smoke had not yet filled the tunnels. That meant the paper was still intact. At the three-way landing, Mako turned toward the workshop. He growled. A sound came from beyond the generators. A weak cough. We followed it. Bryce Nolan lay behind a workbench. His wrists had been tied with electrical wire. Blood covered one side of his face. His wet clothes had been replaced, but he was shivering badly. I knelt beside him. How did you get here? Vale's people took me from the county vehicle. Owen cut the wire. Deputy Harris. Another officer I did not recognize. Harris is in custody, I said. Bryce gave a dry laugh. He was in custody before he was not. My body camera transmitted the statement. Sheriff Shaw would hear it. Bryce gripped my sleeve. Preston has your wife's nurse. What? He brought her here. He said she was the only person who could prove his mother gave the order. Where are they? Archive. Owen helped Bryce sit against the wall. Can you walk? Not fast. We need to get him out. Bryce shook his head. The nurse knows how Norga died. The words stopped me. Did Preston tell you that? He said his mother made a mistake. He said the nurse kept copies. Owen looked toward the rising temperature gauge. It may be a trap. It probably is. I helped Bryce stand. We still do not leave her. The four of us entered the archive passage. Heat pressed through my coat. The first row of shelves had begun to smoke near the ceiling. Paper curled inside several open boxes. Water sprinklers remained inactive. Owen pointed to a series of pipes. Preston closed the suppression valves. Can you reopen them? From the lower control room. A voice came through the archive. Grant. Preston stood near the far table. He held a pistol in one hand. With the other he gripped the arm of a woman wearing a dark medical coat. I recognized her, Lydia Crane, Nora's private nurse. She had sat beside my wife's bed during the final weeks. She had spoken gently. She had brought tea. She had told me Nora's confusion was normal. A bruise covered Lydia's jaw. Preston held the pistol against her side. You took your time, he said. I stepped between him and Mako. Let her go. She has been trying to sell the same story to both sides. Lydia looked at me. I am sorry. Preston laughed. That sentence will not bring Nora back. No, I said. But the truth might stop you from using her death. The destruction alarm sounded again. The temperature had passed 250 degrees. Owen moved slowly toward the side wall. Preston aimed at him. Stop, Owen did. Preston looked at me. You activated the trust. Yes, and released part of the archive. Yes, how much? Enough. His expression sharpened. If it were enough, you would not be here. He was right. I did not answer. Preston pulled Lydia closer. Your wife believed this woman was helping her. In reality, Lydia reported every test, every conversation, and every movement to Mother. Margaret paid me. Why? I asked. To keep Nora sedated. Her voice shook. She wanted Nora declared incompetent before the trust transferred. Did you know the amount was dangerous? At first, she told me the doctor approved it, and later looked at me. Later, I knew. Mako growled. The sound came from somewhere deeper than anger. I felt it too. Not the clean heat of rage. Something heavier. The knowledge that Nora had looked at this woman for comfort, while Lydia helped make her weaker. Did you kill my wife? Lydia began crying. No. Did the medication shorten her life? I do not know. That is not an answer. I stopped giving it to her after Dr. Ruiz confronted me. Nora was already very sick. She made me record everything I had done. Where is the recording? Lydia looked toward Preston. He has it. Preston removed a small drive from his coat pocket. This is what you came for. He held it above a metal vent glowing with heat. Mother's instructions, Lydia's reports, Nora's final medical records. Everything you need to turn suspicion into a murder investigation. Then why destroy it? Because my mother would rather see me imprisoned than allow herself to be exposed. His voice was no longer calm. For the first time, Preston sounded like a frightened son. She told you to burn it, I said. She told me to fix what Nora started. And you obeyed. I always obeyed. The words escaped him. He seemed surprised to hear them aloud. Lydia stared at him. Preston continued. You think I wanted this life? Every school, every friend, every person I married or trusted had to be approved. Every mistake became a threat to the family. Nora was allowed to dream because Mother believed she would eventually come back. But she chose me. She chose freedom. The bitterness in his voice was not about money. It was about Nora doing what he had never done, leaving. Preston raised the drive. You want the truth? Give me the Bell sequence and sign the trust back to the family. You know it cannot be transferred for personal control. You can dissolve it, no. Then Lydia dies, the medical evidence burns, and the archive disappears. A section of paper ignited on a high shelf. Flames spread along the edge of a box. The air filled with black smoke. Owen coughed. Mako looked toward the control room passage. Then toward me. He had detected something. Airflow. Water route. I gave him a small hand signal. Search. He moved low along the shelves. Preston saw him. Call the dog back. He is trying to find a way out. Call him back. Mako disappeared behind the final shelf. Preston fired. The shot struck metal above the dog. I moved before I thought. My body hit Preston's gun arm. The pistol fired again. Lydia dropped to the floor. Preston and I crashed against the table. Pain tore through my injured shoulder. He drove his elbow into my face. I lost my grip. Owen pulled Lydia toward cover. Bryce moved between them and the line of fire. Preston struck my shoulder again. The world narrowed to white light. I fell. He stood over me and raised the pistol. Then water exploded through the ceiling. Mako had found the manual suppression controls. A torrent struck the shelves, the table, and Preston. The pistol moved. I kicked his knee. He collapsed beside me. The drive fell from his hand and slid beneath a cabinet. Lydia crawled toward it. Preston grabbed her ankle. Bryce threw himself across Preston's back. The two men struggled in the rising water. Owen shouted from the control passage, "The heat cycle is not stopping." The sprinklers slowed the fire, but the destruction system continued feeding heat through the vents. Mako returned through the water. His coat was soaked. A streak of blood ran along his left side. The bullet had grazed him. Mako. He came directly to me. I placed my hand against the wound. Shallow, painful, but not deep. He remained standing. "Good boy, stay with me." Preston threw Bryce aside and ran toward the lower chamber. He had abandoned Lydia, abandoned the drive, abandoned everyone. Owen retrieved the device from beneath the cabinet. "Go," he said. "I will shut the system down. You said the final controls are below." "They are. Then we go together." Bryce helped Lydia stand. Smoke thickened above us. The transmission indicator on my body camera fell. 61%. The signal from St. Agnes was still silent. We entered the lower passage. The chamber beyond contained the thermal core, a steel cylinder surrounded by pipes and pressure gauges. Its surface glowed dull red. Preston stood at the manual control panel. He pulled a large lever. Metal doors began closing around the chamber. "He is sealing us inside," Owen said. Mako ran forward. I followed. The first door dropped between Lydia and Bryce. They remained on the archive side. A second began descending between Owen and me. Owen rolled beneath it. The steel struck the floor behind him. Now Mako, Owen, Preston, and I were trapped beside the thermal core. A digital gauge showed the temperature climbing toward 400. Owen examined the controls. The shutdown needs 2 keys turned at the same time. "Where are they?" "One is here." He pointed across the chamber. "The other is behind the core." Preston stood between us and the second station. He still had the pistol. Water dripped from his coat. His face looked almost peaceful. "You should have taken the money," he said. "You never offered me money. You offered me permission to become like you." He raised the weapon. Owen moved toward the first key. Preston fired. The bullet struck Owen below the shoulder. He fell against the panel. I charged. Preston fired again. Mako hit him from the side. The bullet struck the ceiling. The pistol disappeared beneath the core. Preston and Mako fell near an open maintenance trench. Steam poured from below. Preston grabbed the dog's collar and twisted. Mako snapped near his arm but did not bite. He was still waiting for my command. I reached them and pulled Preston away. He struck my injured shoulder. I lost strength in the arm. He drove me backward toward the trench. Metal screamed beneath us. A pipe ruptured. Steam filled the chamber. Through it I saw Nora, not as a ghost, as a memory, standing in our kitchen with flour on her cheek, telling me that strength was not the same as refusing help. I stopped fighting alone. "Mako, hold." The dog seized Preston's coat and pulled backward. Owen rose despite the blood on his shirt. He reached the first key. I drove Preston away from the trench and toward the second station. The temperature gauge reached 380. Ternan shouted. I placed my hand on the key. Preston wrapped an arm around my neck. "You cannot save everyone," he whispered. "No," I pushed the key forward, "but I can choose who I refuse to become." Mako pulled Preston's legs from beneath him. I turned the key. Across the chamber, Owen turned his. For 1 second, nothing happened. Then the thermal core released a deep mechanical sigh. The red glow faded. The gauge stopped rising. 387 degrees. 13 degrees from total destruction. The sealed doors lifted. Cooler air rushed into the chamber. Lydia and Bryce entered with 2 fire extinguishers. They attacked the remaining flames while Owens shut the secondary vents. Preston lay near the maintenance trench. His lower body had slipped over the edge. Only one hand held the metal grating. Beneath him, steam and scalding water moved through the open channel. He looked at me. Help me. Every image from the night returned. My belongings in the snow, Nora weakened in her bed. The broken photograph, the gun aimed at Mako, Owen bleeding beside the controls. I could have watched Preston lose his grip. No one would have called it murder. The chamber was damaged, the floor was wet. He had caused every part of the disaster. Then Nora's voice returned, "Build something kinder than what my family built." I lay on the floor and reached toward him. "Take my hand." Preston stared at me. "Why? Because I am not your family." He gripped my wrist. My shoulder nearly failed. Mako caught the back of my harness and pulled. Owen grabbed my belt with his uninjured arm. Together we dragged Preston from the trench. He collapsed on the floor. For a moment neither of us spoke. Then Preston began laughing. It was not amusement. It was the sound of a man whose entire understanding of strength had just broken. "You should have let me fall," he said. "I know." Sirens echoed faintly above us. Sheriff Shaw and a state tactical team entered the archive minutes later. This time, Eleanor knew which officers were standing behind her. Preston was arrested for kidnapping, attempted murder, destruction of evidence, conspiracy, and crimes connected to the Vale Company. Lydia Crane entered protective custody. She surrendered Nora's recordings and agreed to testify about Margaret's instructions. Owen was airlifted to a hospital. The bullet had passed through muscle without striking bone. Bryce Nolan survived the cold, the beating, and his decision to change sides. Mako received 12 stitches. He hated every one of them. The archive transmission reached 100% shortly after sunrise. By noon, copies existed in federal offices, newsrooms, law firms, and the hands of families whose names had been hidden inside August's files. The truth could no longer be returned to the mountain. Margaret Vale was arrested at her estate 2 days later. She wore the same white coat she had worn when she threw me into the snow. Reporters filled the driveway. Families gathered outside the gates. Mrs. Keene stood near the front steps and watched the officers lead Margaret away. She did not smile. Some victories are too sad for celebration. The investigation lasted more than a year. It uncovered bribery, fraud, unlawful land transfers, medical manipulation, and the deliberate concealment of workplace deaths. Investigators could not prove that Margaret intended to kill Nora. They proved she ordered Lydia to keep Nora sedated so the family could challenge her competence and seize the trust. The medication did not cause Nora's cancer. Medical experts could not determine precisely how much it shortened her life. That uncertainty remained with me. I learned that justice does not always answer every question. Sometimes it protects the unanswered question from being buried. Preston accepted a plea agreement only after learning that his mother intended to place the entire blame on him. He testified against her, not from courage, from survival. Margaret was convicted. Preston was convicted. Chief Deputy Rourke and several county officials lost their positions and their freedom. Sheriff Shaw publicly released the file bearing her father's name. She did not protect his memory. She protected what the badge was supposed to mean. That decision cost her friendships. It also won her the next election without a single campaign speech. The Bell Land Trust was legally activated. Its total value was estimated at more than $180 million. People called it my inheritance. They were wrong. I could not sell it. I could not use it to build a private kingdom. I could only care for it until the next loyal person took my place. That was exactly what Nora intended. During the first spring after the storm, we reopened Fox Hollow. Not as a tourist attraction, not as a monument to wealth, as a place where the truth could live without becoming a prison. The upper cabin became a quiet shelter for veterans and their service dogs. The workshop became a training center. The archive was preserved under independent legal supervision. St. Agnes expanded. Families displaced by the Vale Company received housing grants and legal assistance. Stolen land was returned wherever the records allowed it. The unfinished veterans community was rebuilt by former service members earning fair wages. Owen supervised as the restoration. His doctors forced him to stop climbing ladders. He continued climbing them whenever no doctor was present. Catherine managed the mission. Samuel studied engineering. He said he wanted to build systems that helped people escape before they needed hidden tunnels. Dr. Ruiz created a rural medical program with protections for patients facing family coercion. Bryce became a maintenance worker at Fox Hollow after completing his sentence for the crimes he admitted. Some people objected. I understood. Forgiveness without accountability is only another kind of hiding. Bryce served his time. Then he arrived at the round door with one bag, no excuses, and a promise to work. Mako accepted him before I did. The dog usually reached the truth first. One evening, almost 2 years after the storm, I stood outside Fox Hollow while snow began falling across the basin. Mako sat beside me. More gray covered his muzzle now. The scar along his side had disappeared beneath his coat. Inside the cabin, a group of older veterans sat around the stove. Some spoke quietly. Others said nothing. Their dogs rested near their boots. No one asked them to explain why crowds were difficult. No one told them grief followed a schedule. No one used their wounds to decide whether they deserved a voice. Above the round door, we had preserved August's original words. For those who return. Below them I added a second line. No one heals alone. I carried Nora's cracked photograph in my coat. I no longer looked at it every day. That had once made me feel guilty. Then I understood that love was not measured by how constantly I reopened the wound. Mako leaned against my leg. You ready to go inside? His tail touched the snow once. I opened the round door. Warm light spread across the frozen ground. Voices welcomed us. For most of my life, I believed home was a place I had to defend. Nora taught me something better. Home is the place where no one has to earn the right to be human. I entered with Mako beside me. The mountain closed out the wind. The door remained open behind us, and for the first time, that did not make me afraid. Grant entered the mountain believing he had lost everything that made him a man. In the end, he learned that grief was not weakness, asking for help was not surrender, and loyalty was worth more than any fortune hidden beneath the earth. The true inheritance was never the land, the trust, or the millions of dollars. It was the chance to protect people who had once been left outside the gate. Sometimes justice does not restore every year that was stolen from us. It does something quieter. It gives the truth a home, and it gives the wounded a place to begin again. Thank you for staying with Grant and Mako until the end. Please subscribe and turn on notifications so you do not miss the next story from our channel. Your presence gives us the encouragement to keep telling stories filled with courage, loyalty, and hope.